start with kind of some funny stories with real estate photography because that is a very
Oh God, you're just putting
oh, I
me in the spot. Wow.
so photography is such an important part of presenting the listing. A lot of people, especially in Charleston, 50% of our buyers are moving here from out of state, and some even purchasing homes sight unseen. and I had correspondence with the tenant because, of course, when we list something where a tenant's in there, we have to abide by the lease.
Yes.
Make sure that they're in there through there. If there's a buyer purchasing before then, they obligating that lease. And he was great. He was a really nice guy. Worked with us to show the property and everything. We went under contract with a buyer. He moved out. Let me know, hey, I moved out. It was like 2 weeks before the lease was expiring and like 3 weeks before we were closing. And closing day comes. I go to pick up my sign and lockbox, do kind of the final walkthrough, make sure everything looks good. We had already done inspections with the buyer, this and that. Well, apparently, a squatter and or friend of the previous tenant, which we're not quite sure, the tenant may have said, hey, it's, I'm not living there, it's open, right? We don't quite know. But I walk in to what I expected to be a completely vacant and clean house to somebody in there, which was alarming. There was no furniture in there. It was so dirty. They unfortunately did not have usability of their legs. And
Wait, can you go back and expand on that a little?
We called him Captain Dan because that's all we could do with this story.
He literally had no legs.
No, he had no legs.
And he's living in this.
And he's living on the bottom floor of this property that is supposed to be closing in a day. And he has a parrot. Not even joking.
Way.
A parrot.
No way.
A parrot. So all that's in there is a man with no legs and a parrot. And
were you by yourself?
I was by myself. And he just kind of scuffled through, and he apparently liked to drink a lot, which I'm having our happy hour wine right now, but he didn't want to take himself to the bathroom, so there were bottles of urine all over, as well as empty beer and liquor bottles. And
so how did you get Captain Dan to evacuate?
Well,
did he go friendly? Did he surrender easily?
He was not a very happy captain.
Did they still close?
It did close. We closed a little late. And
they didn't want to close with Captain Dan.
They did not want to close with Captain Dan and the parrot. And I'm telling you, there was no furniture in this house. This man was literally living on the bottom floor with a random parrot.
I feel like
and nothing.
Shouldn't be laughing. Like,
it just tells you that
you can't make this stuff
no.
Make it up.
And I started back in the day when it was like all short sales and foreclosures. So the stories that I have back then will be even better. But bottom line is, it did close, and we didn't have to have police force. But the crazy thing is, and a lot of people don't know this, that there are legitimately squatters' rights. Like, it's a law.
Really?
Uh-huh.
We'll have to talk about that.
We will talk about that. So I think in this situation, I think that the guy had a tie to the previous tenant, and they kind of had it in about like, oh, it's open.
Right.
But
anybody knew it was temporary.
Right.
So when the
and we were able to get him out and still call police because he wasn't supposed to be there. He's not on the lease, all the things. But, we were able to remove it and all that smoothly. However, there are situations where there are vacant properties and people take occupancy because they are aware of it. And
YouTube like 3 years from now.
I mean, come on, these 14-year-olds are on YouTube making all these crazy videos, playing video games for bringing value.
Well, this was fun. Thank you for
Yes, thank you so much.
happy hour chat.
Yes, on our adventure, we're having our wine down today, and we will have subjects and topics of all sorts of things that will bring lots of value during this crazy time and crazy market.
Excited.
So,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, thank you again for watching, and we look forward to it. And we are